Habimi Yosef, 30. Have a decent job in a field that doesn't matter, pays the bills. Have a wife, Juliet. Been married for 4 years. Life is pretty good, or so I thought. We were happy, genuinely. The kind of comfortable, easy happiness you see in commercials for life insurance. We'd go out, I'd pay. Not because she couldn't, but because I liked treating my wife. It felt right. If something broke around the house, I'd fix it. Leaky faucet, wobbly chair, weird noise from the dishwasher. I'm not a master craftsman, just a guy who knows how to use YouTube and a wrench. She used to love it. She'd call me her handsome handyman, bring me a cold drink while I worked. It was a partnership. We were a team. She handled things I was clueless about. I handled things she didn't want to deal with. Felt balanced. Felt like a marriage. Then, something changed. It started subtly. She got really into certain blogs and social media circles online. Suddenly, our vocabulary expanded. New words started popping up in our conversations. Patriarchy, emotional labor, toxic masculinity. At first, I just nodded along. Seemed like harmless internet stuff. Then, it started being directed at me. One evening, we're watching a movie. She's cold. I get up and grab a blanket, drape it over her. Instead of a thank you, I get a weird look. She tells me I'm treating her like she's incapable of getting her own blanket, that it's a subtle assertion of control. MFW. I was just trying to be nice. A week later, I'm opening a stubborn jar of pickles for her. She snatches it from my hand, struggles for a minute, and gets it open herself. She gives me this triumphant look and says she doesn't need a man to open her jars. Okay. I just went back to making my sandwich. It kept escalating. I'd offer to walk with her to her car if it was late and parked far away. That was apparently me implying the world is dangerous and she's a helpless woman who needs a male protector. I'd plan a surprise weekend getaway for us. That was me performing the emotional labor of planning, which reinforced traditional gender roles and put undue pressure on her to be grateful. Every single thing I did, every gesture of affection or care I'd been making for years, was suddenly put under a microscope and labeled toxic. It was exhausting. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. She also had this one friend, a total enabler. Every time Juliet came back from coffee with this friend, the rhetoric was dialed up to 11. The friend was apparently in a fully equitable, non-patriarchal partnership, which sounded more like a business merger than a relationship. Juliet started holding this up as the gold standard. The arguments became more frequent. I tried to explain my side. I told her I wasn't trying to control her. I was trying to love her. I said that in a marriage, you do things for each other. You carry the heavy bags, you fix the broken things, you offer a blanket when it's cold. It's not about gender, it's about being a team. She'd just shake her head and say, I couldn't understand because I was a man, benefiting from the system. My perspective was completely dismissed. It didn't matter what my intentions were, only her interpretation of my actions mattered. The breaking point came on a random afternoon. I get home from work, and I hear a drip, drip, drip from the kitchen. The faucet under the sink is leaking, and there's a small puddle on the floor. Juliet is at the table on her laptop, headphones on. There's a pot on the floor, catching most of the water. She sees me and pulls off her headphones. She says the sink started leaking a few hours ago, and she's been researching how to fix it herself. I look at the puddle, then at the complex plumbing under the sink. I tell her it's a tricky job, might need a specific part, and I can just take care of it right now. I've done it before. This was the wrong thing to say. She goes on a full-blown rant about how I always undermine her, about how I don't trust her to be competent, about how my immediate desire to fix it is a classic example of toxic masculinity, of needing to be the hero and solve the problem. I'm just standing there, tired from a long day at work, looking at water pooling on our hardwood floors. I just wanted to stop the leak. I let her talk. I just stood there and took it. When she was done, I said, "Okay, it's your project. Let me know if you need help." I went into the living room and turned on the TV. An hour later, I hear a loud clang, a curse, and then the sound of water spraying everywhere. I run into the kitchen. She had tried to tighten a fitting with the wrong wrench, slipped, and snapped a PVC pipe. Now, it wasn't a drip. It was a fountain. Water was jetting out, hitting the underside of the counter and spraying all over the kitchen. She's standing there, soaked, looking completely horrified. I didn't say a word. I just walked over, found the shut-off valve for the main water line, and cranked it closed. The fountain died down to a trickle. Silence. She looked at me, expecting me to say, "I told you so." I didn't. I just grabbed a bunch of towels and started sopping up the water. She started crying. That night, she sat me down for a talk. This was it, the culmination of months of this stuff. She told me our marriage couldn't continue like this. It was unbalanced. It was built on outdated patriarchal foundations. She wanted a hard reset. She pulled out a piece of paper, a document she had typed up. She called it the relationship agreement. My blood ran cold. It was a list of rules, like actual, legally worded rules for our marriage. Rule number 1, complete financial separation. We would open separate checking accounts, my paycheck into mine, her paycheck into hers. A third, joint account would be created for shared household expenses. Each month, we would both deposit an exact 50% of the rent, utilities, internet, and shared groceries into that account. No more, no less. All personal expenses were to be paid from our personal accounts. Dinners out, clothes, car maintenance, gifts, everything. If we went out to eat together, we would split the bill. Rule number 2, strict division of labor. She had a spreadsheet, a color-coded spreadsheet detailing every single household chore: cooking, cleaning, laundry, taking out the trash, grocery shopping for shared items. It was all divided perfectly down the middle. My days to cook, her days to cook, my week to clean the bathroom, her week to clean the bathroom. No deviation from the schedule was permitted unless agreed upon by both parties at least 24 hours in advance. Rule number 3, total self-sufficiency. This was the kicker. Each partner is responsible for their own well-being, personal problems, and emotional regulation. No more husband and wife roles. We were to be equal partners. That meant no more fixing her car, no more handling spiders, no more being the protector. If she had a problem, it was her problem to solve. If I had a problem, it was my problem. Emotional support was to be reciprocal and scheduled, not a default expectation. I read the whole thing. It was 3 pages long. It was the most clinical, soulless document I had ever seen. It was a roommate agreement, not a marriage vow. I tried to argue. I asked her if this was really what she wanted. To turn our home into an office? Our marriage into a business contract? I asked her where love fit into this. Where did kindness fit in? Where did the simple act of doing something for the person you love, just because you love them, fit into her spreadsheet? She told me that true equality couldn't have those blurry lines. She said this was the only way to remove the ingrained patriarchal dynamics. I was defeated. I knew nothing I could say would change her mind. She was completely brainwashed. The next day, I met up with a buddy of mine for a drink. He's older, been through a nasty divorce. He knows things. I laid out the whole situation for him. The slow descent into madness, the constant criticism, and finally, the relationship agreement. I expected him to tell me to run for the hills. He just sat there, listening patiently. When I was finished, he took a long sip of his beer. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sign it." I was confused. I asked him why on earth I would agree to such a crazy thing. He leaned in. Because you're not going to fight her on her terms. You're going to fight her on her terms. She's handed you a rule book. She thinks she's the only one who's going to enforce it. Your job is to follow that rule book more perfectly, more completely, and more mercilessly than she could ever imagine. He told me to stop being a husband, stop being her emotional support, stop being her handyman, her financial safety net, her protector. Be a roommate, he said. The best damn roommate she's ever had. Be polite, be clean, be quiet, and be completely, utterly, 100% unavailable for anything outside that contract. Don't do one single thing extra. Let's see how long she enjoys living in the world she created. A switch flipped in my head. He was right. Arguing was pointless. I had been trying to save a marriage that, in her eyes, was already broken. The only way forward was to give her exactly what she asked for. I went home that night with a new sense of calm. I found Juliet in the living room, looking nervous, probably expecting another fight. I walked over, picked up the agreement from the coffee table, and grabbed a pen. I said, "Okay, you win. I'll sign it. We'll do things your way." She looked shocked. Then a wave of relief and victory washed over her face. I added one condition. We follow these rules to the absolute letter, both of us. No exceptions, no cheating, no complaining. This is the system now. We live by it or we don't. Agreed? She eagerly nodded, thrilled that she had gotten her way so easily. I signed the document. She countersigned it. We shook hands, like a business deal. She had this smug smile on her face. She thought she had just won a great victory for feminism and equality. She had no idea she had just signed the death warrant for our marriage as she knew it. And I, for the first time in months, felt a sense of peace. The game had changed, and now I was playing by her rules. The next morning was the beginning of the new era. I woke up at my usual time. Normally, I'd make a big pot of coffee for both of us. Today, I made a single cup in the French press. Just enough for me. I poured it into my mug, washed the press, and sat down to read the news on my phone. Juliet came into the kitchen a few minutes later, still groggy. She went to the coffee pot, saw it was empty and clean. She looked at my mug, then at me. "You didn't make any coffee?" I looked up from my phone. "Sorry, that's not a shared expense. We can add coffee to the joint grocery list if you want, but the labor of making it isn't on the chore chart for today." I took a calm sip. The look on her face was a mixture of confusion and annoyance. She ended up making her own instant coffee, grumbling the whole time. That weekend, it was my turn for shared grocery shopping. I made a list: milk, eggs, bread, butter. The absolute basics we had agreed upon. I went to the store, bought only those items, came home, put them away, and uploaded the receipt to our shared expenses app, requesting a 50% reimbursement from her. Later that day, she realized she was out of her favorite yogurt and the specific brand of oat milk she likes. She asked if I could swing by the store and pick them up for her. I smiled politely. "Sure thing. Just send me a list and Venmo me the money first. I don't want to mix up personal and shared finances." She stared at me, speechless for a second. Then she just said, "Forget it," and went to the store herself. The first few weeks were filled with moments like these. I was the perfect roommate. I performed my assigned chores on the designated days flawlessly. The trash was always out on time. The bathroom was spotless on my week. The meals I cooked for dinner on my nights were simple, nutritious, and exactly on budget. I was polite and cordial. "Good morning. Have a good day at work. The shared portion of the internet bill is due." But that's all it was. The warmth was gone. I stopped doing the little things. No more back rubs while we watched TV. That wasn't in the contract. No more surprise flowers. That was a personal expense. No more, "How was your day, honey?" and actually listening to the answer. Our emotional support was now scheduled and reciprocal, and she never scheduled anything. We were two separate entities living in the same space. She, on the other hand, had a harder time adjusting. She'd forget the rules. She'd cook a meal on her night and automatically make a plate for me, then seem confused when I politely declined, reminding her it wasn't my designated meal night and I had already eaten. She'd complain about a problem with her car, clearly expecting me to offer to take a look. I'd just nod sympathetically and say, "Wow, that sounds really frustrating. I hope your mechanic can figure it out." At first, she seemed to enjoy the freedom. She bragged to her friend on the phone about how our new system was working, how we were truly equal partners now. But I could see the cracks starting to form. The financial reality was the first major blow. I had always been the higher earner, not by a huge amount, but enough that I covered most of our discretionary spending: dinners out, vacations, concert tickets. Now, with everything split 50-50, she was realizing how much she had taken for granted. Her friends would invite her out for an expensive brunch. Before, she'd just go. Now, she had to check her personal bank account and realized she couldn't afford it after paying her half of the rent and bills. She started complaining about being broke all the time. I'd just nod and say, "Yeah, budgeting is tough." One evening, she came to me with a bill from her mechanic, an expensive, unexpected repair. She asked if I could help her out this one time. I pulled up the agreement on my phone and pointed to the clause about personal property and expenses being the sole responsibility of the owner. I told her I was sorry, but the rules are the rules. We both agreed to them. I did, however, helpfully suggest she could look into opening a new credit card or taking out a personal loan. The look of betrayal in her eyes was palpable. She was starting to realize that the patriarchal support system she hated so much was also her safety net. And now she had removed it herself. But the real test hadn't even begun. The true cost of her new world was about to become very, very clear. The house grew quiet over the next month. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was a dead quiet, the sound of a home where two people are actively avoiding a life together. We stopped eating at the same time to avoid awkward silence at the dinner table. I'd see her grab her plate of food, whatever she was responsible for cooking for herself that night, and take it to her room. I did the same. We passed each other in the hallway like ghosts. A polite nod. Maybe a "pardon me." The shared spaces, like the living room, became neutral zones in a cold war. She'd be on one end of the couch, scrolling on her phone. I'd be on the other, reading a book. The space between us felt like a mile. The intimacy was completely gone. We were sleeping in the same bed, but it felt like we were in different zip codes, just two bodies taking up space. I never initiated anything. I was following the rule book. Emotional and physical intimacy must be mutually and verbally agreed upon. She never brought it up. I think she was too proud. Or maybe she was finally realizing that you can't schedule desire on a spreadsheet. Her social life took a hit, too. She tried to host a get-together for a few of her friends one weekend. She announced it to me a few days prior, as per the rules for using a shared space. I just said, "Okay, thanks for the heads up. I'll make sure to stay out of your way." The day of the party, her friends arrive. They're all the same type. Loud, full of jargon, probably have "Smash the Patriarchy" bumper stickers. I'm in the kitchen getting a glass of water when they all walk in. Juliet introduces me. "This is Yosef." Not my husband, just Yosef. I smiled politely. "Nice to meet you all. Hope you have a great evening." Then I took my water and went straight to my home office and closed the door. I could hear them talking in the living room. A little while later, Juliet knocked on the door. She asked if I was going to come out and socialize. She said her friends thought it was weird that I was hiding. I looked at her. Am I required to socialize with your personal guests according to the agreement?" She flushed. "Well, no, but it's rude." "The agreement doesn't cover politeness to guests," I said. "It covers the use of shared spaces. I'm in my personal space. You are using the shared space for a pre-approved personal event. I'm not interfering." I put my headphones on. She left, slamming the door a little too hard. I'm sure she spun some story to her friends about how I was being difficult. But the damage was done. The image of her perfectly equitable partnership had a huge crack in it. Her friends saw a man who treated her like a stranger in her own home. They just didn't know she was the one who had drawn up the lease. The real turning point, the moment I think she truly understood the consequence of her new world, happened a few weeks after that. She got sick. Not just a little cold, a full-blown, knock-you-on-your-back flu. Fever, chills, the whole 9 yards. On the first day, she stayed in bed. I figured she was just tired. On the second day, I got a text from her while I was at work. "Can you pick up some soup and medicine on your way home?" Feeling awful, I texted back. "Sure. Send me the money for it, and I'll be happy to. Or I can send you a link to a delivery service that can bring it to you." A long pause. Then, never mind. When I got home, the house was silent. She was still in bed. I could hear her coughing through the door. I made my dinner according to the schedule. I ate. I cleaned up my dishes. I didn't check on her. It felt wrong. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to go make her some tea, check her temperature, ask if she needed anything. But the agreement. Clause 3. Each partner is responsible for their own well-being. This was her well-being. This was her problem to manage. I was just a roommate, and a roommate doesn't play nurse. The next day, she was even worse. I could hear her on the phone with that one friend, the enabler. Her voice was weak and croaky. She was complaining about how sick she was, and how I hadn't done a single thing to help. I could only hear her side of the conversation. "No, he literally hasn't even asked if I'm okay. I know, right? He said I should use a delivery app. Yeah, he's being so cold." A long pause. "What do you mean? Stand in my power. I have a 102-degree fever." "No, I don't feel empowered. I feel like I'm dying." Another pause. "Okay, well, thanks for the pep talk. Bye." She hung up. Then I heard her start to sob. It was a gut-wrenching sound, the sound of someone who is completely and utterly alone. Her ideology had failed her. Her friend, who had cheered her on as she dismantled her marriage, offered nothing but empty slogans when things got real. She had traded a loving husband for a set of rules and a so-called support system that was a mile wide and an inch deep. She was sick for the rest of the week. She dragged herself out of bed to get crackers and water. She ordered medicine on a delivery app. She recovered. On her own. But something was broken between us after that. The smugness was gone. The ideological fervor was gone. She just looked sad and tired. She stopped talking about patriarchy. She stopped bringing up toxic masculinity. She just quietly went about her days, following the rules of the world she had built, a world that was now her prison. Life continued under the new cold regime. There was another incident, smaller, but just as telling. She had ordered some piece of furniture online, a bookshelf or something. It arrived in a massive, flat-packed box. The delivery driver, following protocol, left it on the front porch. The thing must have weighed a ton. I came home from the gym and saw her in the doorway struggling with it. She was trying to pivot it through the doorframe, grunting with effort. She wasn't strong enough. She saw me walking up the path. There was a flicker of hope in her eyes. The old Juliet would have just said, "Yosef, can you help me with this?" And the old Yosef would have said, "Of course, honey," and lifted it like it was nothing. But we weren't the old us. I stopped at the bottom of the steps. "Looks heavy," I observed politely. She stopped trying to move it, breathing hard. It is. We stood there in silence for a moment. An unspoken negotiation was happening. She was waiting for me to offer. I was waiting for her to ask for help outside the bounds of our contract. I broke the silence. According to the agreement, this is your personal property. I'm not obligated to help you move it. However, I am willing to offer my labor as a service. She looked confused. What? I'll move it into your room for you, for a fee. My rate is $50 an hour, with a 1-hour minimum. I wasn't even angry. I said it with the calm, detached tone of a customer service representative. Her face crumpled. It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. It was about the transaction. She had taken something that was once given freely out of love, my help, my strength, and forced it into a cold, hard, economic exchange. I was just showing her the price tag. She shook her head, looking defeated. No, I'll figure it out. I nodded. All right. Let me know if you change your mind. I walked past her, into the house, leaving her alone with her giant, heavy box of independence. It sat on the porch for 2 days, until she finally paid a guy from a TaskRabbit app to come and move it for her. He did it in 5 minutes. It probably cost her more than $50. Every day was a new lesson for her in the law of unintended consequences. Every single patriarchal convenience she had railed against was now gone, leaving a vacuum filled with inconvenience, loneliness, and expense. The comfortable, easy life she had taken for granted was revealed to be a complex system of mutual support that she had systematically destroyed, one rule at a time. I didn't feel happy about it. I just felt numb. I was watching my wife suffer, and I was the cause of it, but I was only doing what she had demanded. It was a strange, hollow kind of victory. Then came the final exam. It was a few months later. Winter had set in. It was one of those dark, cold, miserable nights. I was at the gym, finishing up a workout. My phone buzzed. It was Juliet. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Her voice was high-pitched, panicked. Yosef, you need to come home, now. What's wrong? It's the bathroom. There's water everywhere. I think a pipe burst. I could hear the sound of spraying water in the background. The old me would have dropped everything, sprinted to my car, and broken traffic laws to get home. The new me took a deep breath. Okay, I said calmly. First, you need to find the main water shut-off valve. It's in the utility closet in the basement. It's a red handle. Turn it clockwise until it stops. There was a pause. I don't know what I'm looking for, she wailed. It's a red handle, I repeated, my voice even. You can't miss it. Once you've done that, the water should stop. Then you need to call an emergency plumber. Can't you just come home and fix it? She pleaded. The old question, the one she could no longer ask. Juliet, I'm not a plumber, and this is a major issue with the shared property. Our agreement states that for repairs to shared property, we must hire a licensed professional. I could hear her crying on the other end. I can't deal with this alone. This is not your problem alone, I corrected her gently. This is a shared problem. Therefore, you need to call a plumber, and we will split the cost of the repair 50-50, as per the agreement. I'm on my way home now. Please call a plumber immediately. The longer you wait, the more water damage there will be. I hung up. I didn't rush. I finished my cool-down stretches. I wiped down my equipment. I took a shower. I drove home at the speed limit. When I walked in the door, it was chaos. She had managed to shut the water off, but not before half the upstairs hallway was flooded. Water was dripping through the ceiling into the living room below. A stressed-out-looking plumber was in the bathroom, making loud noises with a wrench. Juliet was standing in the middle of the mess, looking small and helpless. Her face was pale, streaked with tears. She looked at me, her eyes begging for something, reassurance, comfort, for me to take over. I walked past her and addressed the plumber. What's the situation? He explained that a supply line to the toilet had corroded and burst. He could fix the pipe, but the water damage was extensive. We would need a restoration company. I nodded. I took out my phone and started taking pictures of everything for insurance. I was calm, efficient, detached. An hour later, the plumber was finished. The leak was stopped. He handed Juliet the invoice. She just stared at it. The number was huge, 4 digits. An emergency call-out fee on a weeknight is no joke. She looked like she was going to be sick. She looked at me, holding the piece of paper like it was a bomb. I pulled out my phone's calculator. I typed in the total. I divided it by 2. I showed her the result. That's my half. Send me your Venmo. I then opened my banking app and transferred the money to her right there on the spot. A notification immediately popped up on her phone. My portion of the shared expense has been paid, I said, my voice flat. You'll need to cover the other half from your personal account. That was it. That was the moment the dam broke. She just crumpled. The invoice fluttered to the wet floor. She sank down onto the damp carpet and started to sob. Not the quiet, sad crying I had heard before. This was a full-body, soul-crushing breakdown. It was the sound of a person who had lost everything. I can't do this, she choked out between sobs. I can't do this anymore. She looked up at me, her face a mess of tears and despair. I don't want 50%. I don't want a roommate. I want my husband back. I want you back. I want you to just take care of things. I want you to take care of me. There it was, the truth. The thing she had spent months denying. The thing she had labeled as weak and patriarchal and wrong. The raw, honest human need to be cared for by the person who is supposed to love you most. I stood there, looking down at her, for a long time. The anger I had been suppressing for months was gone. The numbness was gone. All I felt was a profound, aching sadness. I knelt down, not to comfort her, but to be on her level. I spoke, and my voice was quiet, but it carried in the silent, wrecked house. I was your husband, I said. I did take care of you. I opened the jars. I got the blanket when you were cold. I fixed the leaky faucet. I checked on the strange noises in the night. I planned our vacations. I paid for our dinners. I would have come home and taken care of you when you had the flu. I would have carried that heavy box inside without a second thought. I pointed to the ruined ceiling. I would have dealt with this, all of it, and I never would have sent you a bill. Every single one of those things, every act of service, every gesture of care, you gave it a name. You called it toxic. You called it patriarchy. You called it control. You told me you didn't need a protector or a provider. You needed a partner, an equal. You handed me a rule book for how you wanted to be treated. I looked her dead in the eye. I have followed your rules, Juliet, to the letter. I became the man you described, the partner you wanted, detached, independent, transactional. This, I said, gesturing to the water-damaged walls, to the plumber's bill on the floor, to the miserable woman crying in front of me. This is it. This is equality. This is the world you built for us. I let the words hang in the air. So tell me, I finished, my voice barely a whisper. Are you happy with it? She didn't have an answer. She just cried.